It was just me and him and the camera, and we were just like, roll, cut. It was just that, and we just looked at each other and we're like, we're making the movie. We're doing it.
Hey, what are you doing here?
All right, you got me. I'm a scout for the Gophers. Been watching your game for a month, but that story right there just clenched it. You got heart, kid. How soon can you be in Minneapolis?
Joseph Gordon-Levitt and I, we clicked really, really quickly. And we basically had a lunch. He wanted to do it, and I wanted him to do it, and I was like, this is my guy. And even to the point where, because of his schedule, we had to push our start date by a few months. Yeah, we were really partners in crime throughout the whole thing. It was a really intense and like deeply formed relationship, and we had to work like that in order to make this complicated, strange thing as quickly as we did. I mean, for me, you know, everything started at Sundance in 2005. That's the reason I'm still making movies today, you know, is because they took our movie in, and because of what Sundance was and the fact that Focus Features was there and we got picked up, you know, the fact that it's still this vital, you know, this vital place for film after as many years as it's been around is pretty extraordinary. I think this happens a lot. This probably leads into the kind of the second movie syndrome. First movie is usually this tightly polished little gem, and then the second movie is like a confetti gun exploding, for better and for worse. First of all, you feel cut loose, like, oh my God, I can make another movie. But then you also feel like, oh my God, I might be able to make one more movie in my life. So I tried to just get literally everything I love into one movie. From Ricky Jay, con man movies, world travel, all the costumes, all the twists and turns, the romance, and it just, I mean, I don't know, I just tried to jam it all into one film. And I had been, you know, broke throughout my 20s, so I'd never really traveled. And so I wrote all these different locations in it just so that I was like, all right, if I get to make 2 movies in my life, at least I can, you know, I can get out to Europe for one of them. Yeah, we went to Romania, to the countryside of Romania. We went to the beach in Montenegro. We went to Prague. This was this great small group of actors and just kind of traveling roadshow of a movie. It was like a carnival. It was fun.
So even when we're apart, you can remember what I do after I do it?
Yes, but this is a precise description of a fuzzy mechanism. All I know 2 things. I know what's happening in my head, and I know that you're still gonna meet her.
It was funny, first of all, Gemini Man, that script was floating around when I was pitching Looper around, because it's been around forever. And so anytime I would pitch Looper, they would always squint and say, you know about Gemini Man, right? And so when we were making Looper, we felt like when we were getting it together, we were racing against the clock. Like I was constantly nervous a production announcement was going to happen about Gemini Man. There were a couple different issues in terms of if I would have done it differently if we shot it today. The digital thing, I don't know. It's been used in movies that I've loved. The tech still is funky to me. It still doesn't work on the screen for me, just personally. I still find it very distancing. I know it's distancing to have, you know, makeup on Joe, but to me there's something that's less about that, I guess. The incredible makeup designer with Katsu was very happy with the way that the transformation happened. And it was funny because I wrote the movie for Joe, and then we got Bruce to play the older version of him. And there was a certain point before we went out casting for the older part where Joe actually sat me down. He was like, I have to ask this. It's kind of an actor's dream. Do you think I could play both parts and we could age me up with makeup? I was actually really against that because I felt like, even though I understand how that would be an interesting acting challenge, I'm sure Joe would have pulled it off beautifully, having 2 actors sit across the table from each other and actually play off of each other, I felt like was... there's just something about that you can't fake.
Do what you're gonna do.
That big scene in Ozymandias in the desert where Hank dies, one of the big things I remember is that that's in a canyon. That's in a very wide canyon, which means that you have such a limited amount of light, because the shadow of the canyon, it's almost like it's the doomsday clock coming towards you. Around 4 p.m. you see it start to creep and you're going to lose that light really quickly. So we had to shoot really, really fast for that whole sequence. I remember though working with Dean, who played Hank, and working on that moment. He kind of took me aside before it and he goes, I just want Hank to have a moment to himself. I want him to have a moment before he goes. And I go, okay. And so I set up another camera on the ground, kind of disconnected from the points of view of any of the other characters in the scene, that was just for him. And so we shot it, and he took that moment. He kind of collects himself, and you can see he's ready. And then he goes up to say the last line, and then it happens, yeah. And also that final line that Brian gives to Aaron about "I watched Jane die," where he comes around him and just pushes the knife in. That was literally the last moment of light that we had. We were rushing, and it was like everyone set up the camera, quick, oh, here, and go, and action. And I think Brian got like one take at it. I think I just kept rolling and had him come back and do it like twice, and then the shadow hit us and it was over. But God, he nailed it.
And inside you,
Inside me, that same force.
and this is the lesson.
You know, I saw Star Wars when I was, 5 years old, living in Denver, and kind of a million miles away from Hollywood or movie making or anything. And also, as a kid, when I was absorbing those movies between the ages of like 5 and whatever, 10 or 12, it was the perfect age because you're on the cusp of adolescence, and that's really what that's all about. It is feeling it's not about you being in a little farm town or something, or it's not, I know that when Lucas was writing it, he was writing about being like out in Modesto and feeling like I gotta get out of this town. That's what being on Tatooine is. When you're in your little home with your family and your world is kind of small, and the real adventure is transitioning into adolescence, into adulthood. And that's the thing you're gazing out there at. And the notion of how do I do that? How do I go out there? And along that journey, you're gonna have mentors, you're gonna have adversaries, you're gonna have adversaries who you turn into mentors and vice versa. It's gonna be a complicated journey, and that's what Star Wars essentially is for me. A lot of it has to do with Luke. A lot of it has to do with Luke's journey about taking on the mantle of myth, I guess, and taking on the mantle of what Luke was for me growing up, and recognizing that at some point our job is to inspire the next generation. I spent a lot of time with Mark before we started shooting, and we really, we get along really well. We're still friends. Even getting close to him, even getting to know his wonderful family, even like working closely with him on the set. A day didn't go by where there wasn't a moment where I just like zoomed back in my head and was looking at Luke, and I was like, hey, what am I doing? I can't.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to gently request that you all stay in town until the investigation is completed.
What? Can we ask why? Has something changed?
No.
No, it hasn't changed, or no, we can't ask?
Mr. Stevens, you may continue.
The big denouement scene is one of my favorite types of scenes in all of fiction. And all the Agatha Christie movies, had fantastic ones like Death on the Nile with Peter Ustinov, and Murder on the Orient Express with Finney. And then, Usual Suspects it's not a whodunit, but it's kind of is. It's a similar type of thing, actually, where it sort of hides a whodunit underneath this gangster thriller. The way that McQuarrie brought together all those elements at the end, it's masterful. You aim for a moment like that, the Kaiser Soze moment. Clue is what most people think of when they think of whodunits, and the movie Clue I love, but when we were starting this out, I had to be really clear with everybody. Clue is a parody of murder mysteries, whereas it was a tonal difference, but it was a really important one, that we're never going to tip over that line, that we're doing a murder mystery that's about something. It'll be really fun, it'll have a kind of a cheeky sense of self-awareness, it'll hopefully have a lot of humor, but we're never going to tip into parody. And I also, because of that, I wanted to construct the whole thing so it was really satisfying at the end. So dramatically it's built so it can really only have one ending.